be open to your coaching capacity, to your capacity as an entrepreneur, and be willing to let go of delivering such a perfect service. Don't let perfection be the enemy of greatness, and bring in more people, coach people, empower people around you.
Hi, and welcome to the Conscious Marketer podcast. It's Richard here, and also here with Kylie. Hi, Kylie.
Hey, everybody.
And we are really pleased to introduce you to Charbel Zreik, and he runs a company called Manifestation Capital. And he's a visionary, creative, strategic, and empathetic leader with a passion for excellence and team building. He's got a track record of success across a variety of spiritual and entrepreneurial endeavors. He's a completely self-made person whose parents did not read or write. He fled the Lebanese civil war with his family and worked his way through 2 Ivy League educations. That's really impressive. Welcome, Charbel. It was so great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's great to be here. Hi, Kylie.
Hi.
And I want to share a little bit more about what he's doing, because I think he's really a light in the world. And, what the world needs is more companies that have dual purposes or triple purposes that are kind of raising consciousness. And his company, Manifestations Capital, is a profit plus impact fund focused on the inner healing subset of the mind, body, spirit sector. So he currently manages over 50 direct investments in growing companies in this field. And he's also an adjunct professor at Wharton Business School, teaching an MBA level course on entrepreneurship. So that's like super amazing. But maybe, Charbel, you can maybe give us a little bit of an introduction about maybe a shortened version of how you came to kind of weave your way from your background all the way to being kind of this powerful force in the consciousness and spiritual business field where you're doing good things in the world.
Yeah, sounds good, Richard. And I'll try to keep it short. But, I'll have to start with my own spiritual journey, which for me, I was fortunate, began at a young age, at the age of 10 or 11, soon after I came to the US from Lebanon. I had these very unique heightened consciousness moments as a kid that I was trying to make sense of. And they really were just moments where I came out of my mind. I realized my space. I realized that I existed. And those early moments really put me on a trajectory of spiritual exploration for the rest of my life. And in fact, the only time I ever heard those moments explained was decades later by Eckhart Tolle. And that's when I became a really strong disciple of Eckhart Tolle, and still am today. But from that moment forward, I was also an immigrant. So we grew up, really poor. I was collecting cans from the corner with my mom. We grew up on food stamps. And I also had in me that hungry immigrant, need to put food on the table, need to make something of myself mentality. And so those two worlds, the spiritual exploration and the pursuit of entrepreneurial business stuff, kind of went side by side for many years, through JP Morgan Venture Capital, through McKinsey and Company, through a bunch of professional endeavors, and through, really strong adherence to the Roman Catholic Church, a few years meditating with Tibetan Buddhists from the Insight tradition, a lot of Shivananda yoga background. And things really shifted for me around 2016 when I was running and growing an IT business, and things as a CEO and as a leader became quite challenging for me. And it was during that time that the two worlds started to converge, and my spiritual practice and the way I led in business started to take shape and become one. And actually that combination ultimately helped me to be quite successful in that business. I sold it in 2018. Went into a cocooning stage where I focused on inner healing, became a yoga teacher, a meditation teacher, did a lot of somatic therapy to process a lot of traumas that I had never had space in my life to process. And I came out of those 2 years asking a different type of question for the first time in my life. Now that the immigrant was satiated and a little bit calmer, because I had this, I basically accomplished all my external goals. I was able to, for the first time in my life, really ask the question, how am I meant to serve in the world? And that's where manifestations capital came about. I'd had physiological challenges during the running of my company. So I'd worked with integrative doctors to help heal my gut issues and other physical issues. I'd been through, a lot of emotional transformation and spiritual depth. And so that's when I said, okay, I thought about being a healer and just continuing to teach meditation and yoga. But I'm like, I'm a decent asana teacher, a better meditation teacher, but I'm never going to make an impact on thousands. I'll impact the 15 or 20 that come to my meditations, and I love them. I'll continue to do that, and I really enjoy that. And maybe I'll impact, the hundreds that are in my classes at Wharton. But ultimately, I thought that I didn't want to give up my, operator running a business skill set, investor skill set. So I thought, hey, let me combine these. Let me become an operator, an investor, and invest in entrepreneurs who are helping people go through this inner healing journey that's been so important for me all my life. Sorry, that was a little bit long-winded, but
No, that was amazing.
that's how Manifestations Capital came about.
I've always been fascinated on how you went from IT to spirituality. So that was good to hear that from you. And I hear that type of story a lot from the people we interview. Like, I was doing corporate and then one day I just couldn't do it anymore. And we hear that often. I'm super curious. How do you pick companies to invest in? Because there's a lot of transformational companies out there, a lot of people doing good things in the world, a lot of people that are spiritually based. What's your criteria for finding a company that you want to invest in?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kelly. There's many levels of criteria. It starts off with mission alignment. For us, a lot of it is about the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur has to have this combination of energies, right? On the one hand, a truly heart-centered, like healing intention behind what they're doing, and on the other hand, an entrepreneurial drive and orientation, if you will, that will allow them to be successful. And just those two combinations in one person is kind of hard to find. So that's a first filter on things. Second, we have a view of this mind, body, spirit space and inner healing realm, and what are the companies that we think could really make an impact. And so we mapped that out, and we really did that based on the journeys of a couple of customer types. Like a spiritual aspirant who's looking to develop their inner spiritual life, or a chronically ill person that's looking to get healing through alternative modalities. And eventually those people do segue into the spiritual life. So we mapped out that journey of people who are looking for healing. And honestly, a lot of that was informed by my own mission or my own journey through that healing process and talking to a lot of people along the way. And as a result, we map out, 18 different types of businesses that we really want to invest in. So the type of business also has to do with it, Kylie. And then thirdly, we do need to see some traction and scalability for investors. And this is a frustrating part, right? Because there are a lot of this healing is happening by beautiful individuals who themselves are healing, 50, 100, 200, 500 people in their circles. And those aren't really scalable or investable businesses. So that part of it is tough. So, scalability is an important criteria. That being said, a couple of the 18 business types are actually services to those people like yourselves, like conscious marketers, that help them accelerate their individual businesses.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we do a lot of work with therapists, and in one of our groups, I asked what people thought the annual revenue was of BetterHelp, which is a big company out there in the market, and people, I think the highest guess was like 21 million or something like that, and I think their revenue is over $1 billion now, and they're matching,
Wow.
obviously people who need therapy with therapists. I think it was backed by Silicon Valley. A lot of money poured into that world. And it was pre-COVID. So then there was this wave of people seeking out therapy through COVID that, massively increased. So I think there definitely are scale, as there's definitely scalable businesses in that realm, but it's a little harder to find the ones versus a typical industry. Well, I really liked your kind of your journey, and I think that some people, it's funny, we do conferences and things, and almost every time I'm out there at a booth, or sometimes we talk at these conferences, I always talk to people who are kind of living two lives,
Yeah.
so I can kind of picture you at like JP Morgan or like your consulting firm, and like working really hard all day and then leaving the room and then doing yoga or meditation or going off on a retreat on the weekend. And then after a while, there becomes a dissonance between the two worlds, and you kind of have to figure out how to merge them. Is that what you found, that like at some point it was like they just kind of merge together? Or maybe a better question is, what advice would you give to somebody who's in a job and it's not really aligned with what they want to do, but they want to help the world and be of service?
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly it was like that for me, Richard. I mean, I remember I'd come back from, the holidays, and people would be talking about what they did. And I tried to describe what we did at the Shivananda ashram, waking up at 5:30 a.m., meditation for 2 hours, yoga for 2 hours, repeat the cycle again. And it was interesting conversations, to say the least. But yeah, there was certainly that dual path. And for me, a lot of it, the conversions was driven by necessity, honestly. I mean, we're on a spiritual path, not because it's or a healing path, not because it's some esoteric practice. It actually is very helpful to the way we connect with people and to the way we are in the world. So for me, it was necessity. Other things weren't working, and it was really, as I shed more and more ego and shifted my mindset from a self-oriented leadership style to more about serving other people and putting myself in service, that really made a big difference. So I think what I would say to people like in that situation is, first and foremost, stick to the practice. For me, morning ritual is key, totally key. And so first and foremost, in whatever world you are, draw the boundaries around that world so you could separately continue to have that ritual that develops and allows you to nurture your own inner journey. That for me was fundamental in whatever I did. So even if I was working 80 hours, how do I draw that boundary? How do I protect that first hour of the day to make sure I do my meditation session, I do my journaling, I do my physical practices? Then I would say, like, honestly, a lot of it, I think, is about the how. First, before we step back, we so often jump into like, oh, what am I meant to do? Maybe I should leave this and go. I think before that, really focus on the how. So for me, I was running an IT Wi-Fi company, the Wi-Fi for hotels, nothing to do with the inner healing space whatsoever. But it was really about how I was showing up with people around me, how I was being critical of myself and of the people that I worked with, how I reacted to catastrophe, my lack of surrender and accepting. And so a lot of it started with this inner cleansing of the inner critic, and learning about shame, learning about how to treat myself more compassionately and kindly, and then how to lead people in a different way. So that how was really a major transformation for me, and then paved the way for the what I was doing to change. But I would say, start with the how, and how you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. Are you attached to the process, not the outcome? Are you being kind and compassionate? Are you doing everything you can, but still in a surrendered state of being in what you're doing?
I love all of that. I like something I'm going to backtrack a little bit to something you said earlier, which is like you really want to look at scalable models. If people are at a beginning or an intermediate place in their business, what are some ways that they can bake in that idea of scalability from the very beginning?
Yeah, and we have to be careful here. And by the way, for us, we work with companies once they reach 500,000 of revenue and above, right? And I know I have a lot of friends who are therapists. That's not even anywhere in the realm of their ambition. They're looking to spread the modality that they're experts in. And I think, I left venture capital to begin with because I don't love the venture math model that says, hey, we're going to invest so much in you that you have to be a certain size for us to all feel good about ourselves. I really think some companies are meant to be billion-dollar companies, Other companies are meant to be 20 or $30 million companies and make an impact in the world. And other practices are meant to be $100,000 or $200,000 practices and make an impact in the world. So I think, you know, my starting point is, let's not get too enamored with scalability. You know, what is the right thing for me? What are my goals? At the end of the day, I'm trying to help people heal. What is my mission? But then as you do think about scalability, we could think about a couple of things. One is just offering a service that is so authentic and so valuable to people that that becomes your biggest marketing. And it becomes your biggest marketing in two ways. One, the people come back, and two, they spread the word. And at the end of the day, I think it starts, no matter what, even if you're thinking scalability, it starts with that. Like, how authentic is the service that I'm offering? How genuine is it? How great is it? How excellent is it? So start with excellence. Then I would say, you know, as things grow, if you know, be open to your skill set. So for example, you may have a skill set of a healing modality, but you may also have a skill set of coaching other people. And you may have a skill set of getting clients, for example, whereas other therapists don't have that skill set. So think about, how can I let go? You know, sometimes creating an excellent product is in opposition to bringing in more people to help you, because you're really controlling the nuances of what you deliver. And so I think a big step in scaling is realizing that you have skill sets beyond the core service, which is an entrepreneurial skill set, a coaching skill set. Be willing to bring in people to work with you. You know, a perfect example is a massage therapist who fills her schedule, stops there, versus a massage therapist who fills her schedule, but then brings 3 or 4 people to work with her. And those people have no interest in getting clients, no interest in setting up an LLC or figuring out how to take payment. And she really does a huge service for those therapists and more clients, because she is able to coach, or he is able to coach the therapists that are working for them. So be open to your coaching capacity, to your capacity as an entrepreneur, and be willing to let go of delivering such a perfect service. You know, don't let perfection be the enemy of greatness, and bring in more people, coach people, empower people around you. At the end of the day, most businesses, in anything that you do, and that was something I had to learn too, really has to do with partnership, being able to relinquish control a little bit and grow the team.
Yeah, that's really useful advice to help give people perspective on where they're at. I know one of the things that you're passionate about is helping people accelerate their inner healing journeys. And I kind of feel like this is it's a wave that's in the future, but it hasn't really, there's a lot of interest in it, but it hasn't really been figured out. But I'm kind of curious what your ideas are of how some of the companies and technologies that are coming up now can actually help people on their spiritual journey and in healing journey, because with AI and a lot of the advanced technologies with brain scans and everything like this, it feels like at some point the spiritual world and even the scientific world are going to merge. What's your view on that? Or what are you seeing with some of the, maybe this companies that you're working with?
Yeah. So, when we think about, there's many ways to think about the landscape. For us, we really think about it in a kind of, we take the mind, body, spirit components and lay them out in that way. A really interesting population, which I am part of, that I think when we think about healing is often like, relegated to the sidelines, are people with chronic illnesses. The body holds a lot, right? And these people who have chronic illness that are really 80% of the healthcare burden in this country, that comes from 20% of the population with chronic illness, they often hit a complete dead end when it comes to traditional healthcare. Like the gut, thyroids, metabolic health, like all the things traditional healthcare is pretty bad at doing. And these people end up with, including myself, I still work with a digestive health challenge. But people with this chronic illness chronic illnesses end up at the doorsteps of these functional doctors, integrated medicine doctors, alternative healers. And I think that's a very important part of the healing process. One, because it's real, people are suffering. Two, because a lot of these ailments are at the intersection of the psychosomatic. So it's really hard to delineate what is, an undiagnosed gut bacteria versus what is a clenching of the gut from hidden trauma in the body. And so there's a real overlap in the chronic illnesses and in the mental, spiritual well-being. And then interestingly, as people progress through the chronic healing journey, they do often start to utilize modalities like yoga and meditation to help in their healing. And ultimately, they become curious about the inner life because, as we all know, through the body is a journey into the inner dimension. And so you have to become more intuitive with the body to start healing yourself and be the captain of your own physical healing process. And ultimately, you do end up segueing into more spiritual practices. So for us, this landscape of functional medicine, integrated medicine is really important. We see practices out there who we would like to invest in and help to grow, because a lot of times it's individual doctors or individual DOs or individual chiropractors who are trying to spread the word. Many of them are struggling with profitability. So you have practices; those are businesses that we see. You have labs, specialty labs that are trying to use a different understanding of the biomarkers in the body to really inform what is happening in chronic disease and also what is happening in mental health care. So far, mental health care has not had a lot of innovation around what's happening biologically, what supplements are deficient in the body in order to balance out someone's mental health experience. There's a lot of tools. There's epigenetic testing that's going on that's very interesting in this space of functional integrative medicine. There are companies that are looking to do just coaching and bring in a lot of the modalities that we know from integrative medicine that are good for gut health, for example, or hormone health, and bring that into traditional healthcare. So there's that whole category of things. In the mind part, of course, it comes as no surprise. We're very excited about the progress in psychedelic therapies. And we really think, if you look at the evidence of the impact that's having on patients who otherwise have no other options, it's very encouraging. So we are fans of those medicines done in the right way, in the right context, with the right supervision. And so those have been part of our portfolio in the mental health space. We stay away from investing in general mental health, like roll-ups and things like that, because there's a lot of investors looking at that space. But things that are alternative in the mental health space, we're big fans of. And then on the spiritual end of the spectrum, you see platforms that aggregate different teachers that are agnostic, right? Like Sounds True and the Shift Network, and both of whom we're close with. There's platforms like that are making a big difference on the spiritual side. A couple of things that we have our eyes on that we haven't really seen people crack the nut on is a platform that really empowers solopreneurs, individual healers, to start their businesses and build them. So, we keep evaluating companies that are doing this. We haven't found one to invest in, but, we're very excited about something that really takes a solo healer and says, hey, why don't we help you grow your practice by being the front end marketing piece, putting up the website, doing the legal stuff for you, building insurance for you, giving you a platform to track your clients, et cetera. So that kind of all-in-one, one-stop shop for healers is a platform that, we see emerging and are excited about. And then something like BetterHelp, but more expensive, Richard, like something that really looks at, okay, where am I in my healing journey? Is it physical? Is it mental? Is it spiritual? Even spiritual, even mental health, for what I'm working with, is it better to have a somatic-based healer is the IFS modality more helpful? Is cognitive behavioral therapy more helpful? Is it a combination? Should I be thinking about, psychedelic assisted therapy in its legalized form? If so, which of the medicines would be helpful? So really a service, it's probably not just a technology, because as good as AI has gotten, it's probably an AI assisted kind of a service where people are interacting with it and really using that intelligence to help direct people who want healing to the right healing modality.
I love that. That's so powerful. I hope that that comes to fruition. And I love that you're doing the psychedelic stuff too. I don't take those anymore. I did enough in my younger years, but I do truly support it for people that need it. So good with PTSD and veterans and things of that nature, where other medications and treatments they're not responding to it. So I love that you're up to that. When you come into a company that you've just invested in, what are some of the first things that you do to help them expand and grow? I'm real curious about that.
Yeah. So our starting point is always, mentorship to the key leadership, mostly the CEO. And usually they have like an idea of how to go about it. Usually and so we try to support them through a lot of the day-to-day organizational challenges, people challenges that they face. By the time we've come into a company, usually there's a clear product market fit. There's a clear, okay, here's my service, here's my product to the world, and here are the people that are willing to pay for it, and here's the value that they get from it. If there are still any open-ended questions on that front, we'll focus with the entrepreneurs on that to say, okay, is there a clear segment of the population for which you are an awesome, perfect service to them that helps to solve their problem in a very clear way? So that usually we'd like that to be there. If it's not, we'll help a person in developing that. Then after that, it quickly becomes about a couple of things. One is, okay, how do I grow the team? And so we help them to think about, hiring decisions. What is the right next hire to invest in? Where's your skill set, and what is the gap that is needed to complement your skill sets? How do you attract the right people? How do you go about the screening process of hiring someone? What could be, fair compensation for that role? So one area is kind of growing the organization. Another one is, of course, sales and marketing, right? Even starting with as simple as, should you focus on sales or should you focus on marketing? Are you trying to build a pipeline where you're reaching hundreds of people and you need a disciplined like sales pipeline approach? Or is it more of a marketing funnel approach where you're targeting, tens of thousands of people and trying to get a subset that match your needs? So, we'll always end up trying to help and work with sales and marketing. So those are a couple of the big categories, Kali, but it's amazing how much, a lot of it is about just having been there and done that. I grew, when I sold my Wi-Fi company, I had 150 employees at the time. And so, at that point, you've really seen a broad range of all the issues that could go wrong, and a lot of the different combination of challenges. And so honestly, when we come in, there's usually bigger investors who are trying to do the strategy and a lot of this other stuff. And a lot of the way we add value is spending time with the CEO, having been in the trenches with them, and sometimes honestly, it's just about coaching them on their own healing, on their own wellness, on their own boundaries. Hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And creating a really safe space for them to open up. I sit on some boards, but many times I don't sit on boards, and I like that because I don't have a responsibility to look out for the investor group. I'm just there to help the CEO and coach them. Be like, hey, what are you struggling? How are you doing? What are you struggling with? And we go from there. And sometimes that's capital raising. Sometimes that's being overwhelmed personally. Sometimes that's a conflict with a board member. Sometimes they brought on an investor and they're taking the company in a direction that they don't agree with. So I would say honestly that's probably the biggest way we add value, is having been in the seat of the CEO and the entrepreneur, and being understanding for most of the challenges that they bring up.
I know you teach this class at Wharton now, and back in the day, I actually worked in the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and was I have a degree from University of Chicago. But I'm kind of curious: are today's business students, are they interested in this field? Is there like a resurgence? Are they wired differently? Are they like, coming in a little bit different than, because back when I went in school in the 90s, most people wanted to go straight into consulting or investment banking, or there was like two or three fields that were like the top ones. Is it a smaller percentage, or how do you blend kind of what you do? Are they interested in what you do?
Yeah, wow, such a good question, Richard. Yeah, it's fascinating to me. So I'm teaching this class on entrepreneurship through acquisition. So the process of raising capital, analyzing businesses, choosing a business, acquiring it, stepping into the CEO role, and building it. And so, they come there looking for that. They walk into the classroom looking for that. Um, I would say, the way I blend it is a lot from my own experience. So we have 12 modules. One of the 12 modules is about inner mastery, is the way we call it, right? And it's not a foreign concept, right? It's not that far from the inner MBA that people are involved with. That Sounds Through puts on, and it's really uh, awakening the MBAs at Wharton to the notion that to become a great leader is much more than an intellectual endeavor. And when you bear risk, you feel that on your shoulders, in your body, and in your nervous system. And so for you to show up as a great leader, you have to be more than what you have to tend to it in different ways than the rest of the curriculum here, which is in the mind. You have to come down here and tend to things down here. And so in that one module, I address that, Richard. That's like my, the one area that completely overlaps with who I am and what I'm doing now. And I've only taught the class once. It's now every semester, so I'm about to start teaching it again next week. But it's a tough module to deliver. So
you just have to come in a robe with sandals and light a candle, and hand out crystals to everybody. I'm just joking.
exactly. Last semester I tried to bring in a guest speaker who was this, Tibetan Wharton grad, but become Tibetan Buddhist, and was a coach, a great friend and mentor to me. And it went okay. But at the end of the class, I think a student, like after 90 minutes of the discussion, a student raised their hands and they said, "Does this have anything to do with psychedelics?" Like just like a random question, totally random. But I would say I don't have a complete handle on where they are yet. I think there is a receptivity. I think most of the students there are 4 or 5 years out of undergrad, so maybe they're in their late 20s, early 30s, and there is receptivity and curiosity more so than I would have thought in the past. I mean, look, when I was at McKinsey, we taught some of our clients to meditate, and that was back in 2006, 2007. And there was a very subset of leadership that was tuned into the inner dimension. I definitely think it's a bigger subset now. I don't know how big it is or not. I'm certainly starting with that one module in my class. And if there is appetite, maybe there's room to expand it into a whole class on this. But certainly when you speak of wellness, I don't like the topic of, the word wellness, right? Because that includes things like Botox and, other things that have nothing to do with the inner healing dimension. But I think people relate to wellness and mental health as a starting point for discussion. And then you could take it a little bit deeper.
Yeah, it's kind of like you just meet people where they're at. It was kind of interesting because I think when we started in the digital world, the digital world really expanded from 2005 onward, at least on the online space is what I would say. I mean, the internet was around, but for digital teaching, at least, and delivery of courses, that the internet speeds finally got fast enough. And then filming technology kind of got cheap enough as well. But I was always kind of waiting because in the early days, most of our clients were therapists, healers, meditators, yogis. And I was kind of waiting for it to spin back into business. And then it kind of happened, I think, 2013, 14. I think mindfulness went shoo. And it was kind of like the Trojan horse So you could talk about like scientific backed studies, and it made its way into politics and into business, and the trend kind of flew in there. And then we run big summits for people, and we did a big summit. I'm not sure what the year was, but we were approached by a publisher in Berkeley, Barrett Kohler, and they kept coming to me, and I was like, that's not a good enough idea. We need a bigger idea. I was like, get a big speaker or a big teacher and we can do something big. Cause I was like, cause the summit's a big deal. It's a lot of work. And they came and they're like, well, we have this guy named Ken Blanchard. And I was like, I know who Ken is, and so he wanted to do something on servant leadership. And I'm like, I'm game for that. So we did a big summit on servant leadership, and that was, it was quite well received. And, he had a lot of leading speakers, and kind of to what you were saying earlier in the call, it was interesting because a lot of the speakers that we had on there, it would have been I remember we had like WD-40, the CEO from WD-40, and they talked about how they integrated values and culture. And so it was a lot of companies that you wouldn't think, or Chick-fil-A, they have like Sundays, they close the restaurants, and but it's a multi-billion-dollar company, and so they brought in a lot of speakers who were really running conscious businesses, but they were kind of under the radar, and you wouldn't know from looking at them that they were led by deep values. And now I think my hallucination is that things like psychedelic assisted research and mindfulness meditation, all these things are open for the business world, and it just wasn't safe, say 10 years ago, to talk about those in the corporate environment. And now it's almost like if you don't talk about it, if you don't have some like meditation practice, then something's wrong with you. It's like it's almost flipped to the other side. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here. And I think companies like you are kind of leading the way to accelerate that adoption.
Yeah, exactly, Richard. Exactly. That really resonates. I think no reason to blow someone's socks off. Like, meet them where they are and expand on it, right? Like, business school students are very much tuned into leadership, to emotional intelligence, right? So okay, maybe we're just redefining that for them now. It's taking it to the next level. So that really resonates. And the other thing is, once you do take a little bit of leap of courage and start talking about this stuff in certain circles, you accentuate it. And so I invest outside of manifestations. I invest with a very traditional group of investors in the lower middle market, in all kinds of companies, software and healthcare and IT. And, now I've become known as like this person. They don't know what to do with me. They don't know what to call me, but they know that I deal in this like esoteric world. And so people come and find me. People are like, hey, Charbel, from that world, kind of secrets will be like, hey, you kind of speak my language. Or at Wharton, a student will walk up to me after class who's like a yoga teacher, like, hey, can we get together? I'm thinking about, a type of meaningful career that I can have. So people do start to find you when you start talking about those things. You'll alienate some people because you'll be a little bit too far out there, as it's seen. But I'm totally starting to see that. Like, even in this traditional realm, we did an investment in functional medicine. It took the community a lot to get comfortable with it. What is this? Is this science-backed medicine? What really is it? We also, I wasn't part of it, but there was an investment in that community done for ketamine clinics. And, again, took them a little bit to get comfortable with it. But, you are definitely starting to see a little bit more of the intersection.
I love everything you're saying. I feel like I could talk to you forever. And actually, we've already gone way over how long we normally do these episodes because it's just so interesting, and I want to keep talking to you all day. But I will ask you one final question, and that is, yesterday we did a podcast just between Richard and I on market saturation. I think it's something that our clients are really worried about. But then someone like you can see the expansion in the market, or you wouldn't be investing, right? You can see that there's more and more opportunity. What would you say to people that are maybe solopreneurs or service providers in the consciousness space about where do you see the market going?
Yeah. Wow. Such an important topic. The saturation topic. I think this is not backed by some deep research, just my intuition from everything that I've seen. I think there was a shortage of these types of services for a while for people. And then there is, accelerated awakening, if you will, and a lot of services came into the market. All of a sudden, my best friend who's a drummer is now like an IFS therapist. And, there's an entry by a lot of people. And it feels like there's a lot of offerings right now. You get a lot of emails from people. I think that is the case. But I don't really believe that it's saturated for a couple of reasons. One, I think, everyone just kind of came in and there hasn't been the right matching, the right matching of the right person that needs this modality is matched with this healing. And I think that will sort itself out over the next couple of years. And you don't want to leave the mix just because you can't find your people, your clients quite yet. It may be just a matter of time for the people that need your healing to come together. So one is be a little patient as the matching sorts itself out. Two is, I think there are many more people coming into the market. So the market itself is taking different forms, right? Like, what blows my mind is just in the past 15 years in the US, 12% of the population shifted into identifying as spiritual. 12%. If you consider the whole history of humanity and religion and the practice of religion versus spirituality, to shift 12% of the population in a decade, I think it was in 5 years, is mind-blowing to me. So I do feel like there's a real accelerated trajectory of people coming into this space and desire and drawn to these types of healing modalities. I know we're talking about healing in general. So I think that market will continue growing. And I would say, keep an eye out for unusual suspects, if you will, right? Like you may not think that someone suffering with IBS or fibromyalgia or migraine headaches is really looking for, a therapeutic modality or mental health mentality, but they may in fact be looking for that. That may be in fact exactly what they need is to process some physiologically based trauma. So, I'd say keep an eye on those unlikely candidates for your services.
Yeah, it's really interesting even just to be talking about this, because we did the membership site launch for IFS, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. It just keeps clicking in, and then we did a joint program with them, and then we did the initial marketing for Inner MBA. And so we've been involved in a lot of these kind of behind the scenes. It's been kind of fun. And now to see like IFS has wait lists for 6 months for their courses because nobody can get into them now. And so some of the things, it's like now that the thing's in movement, it's like this trend, this just keeps rolling through. So it's super exciting. I think it's going to elevate all of consciousness, and God knows I don't know if God knows, but we definitely need it at this time. There's a lot of conflict, and as human beings, we seem to keep trying to figure things out,
So needed.
If people want to learn more about your company and kind of get in touch with you, or they have an idea they want to pass to you or something like that, like what are you looking for, and how should they get in touch with you?
So definitely check out our website, Manifestations Capital. Manifestations is plural, manifestationscapital.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter there. There's also a form where you could submit the business that you have with some basic criteria about it. So that's a great way to have a submission into us. Unfortunately, I have to say we do have the barrier of you have to have a few 100,000 of revenue for us to get engaged. So I know that rules out a lot of people, and hopefully as we grow, there'll be a different side of the business that we could do to just help people, whether it's nonprofit or otherwise. But for the time being, we're looking for scalable companies that can quickly achieve that level or have achieved that level of growth already. And broadly in the inner healing dimension without limiting that.
So good. Oh my God, you just gave so much value. I want us to talk for another hour and be like Joe Rogan and have like a 4-hour podcast episode.
I would love that. And can I just say, like, being on here with the two of you guys, like, it just there's a little bit of shock for me in it, because I really look up to the both of you, and I have for years. I've known who the two of you are for years, and the fact that you've been involved with a lot of the spiritual education that's out there and accelerated this whole trajectory for humanity. I'm really so honored to be in your presence today. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe this is just the start. We'll have to get together, and I see you play tennis. You come into Spain and play some tennis on the clay courts here, or
Yes.
we could meet somewhere else. The clay courts are super fun here. So, and you love chocolate and coffee, so we have a lot of common interests besides just the meditation part.
Amazing. And I love Spain. So yeah, amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today, and thanks all the listeners for tuning in. It's been a special episode, and if you want to get more information, you can go to consciousmarketer/podcast, and we'll have all the show notes, and we'll have the links to Charbel's website. And again, thank you so much for coming and sharing your deep wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye for
Have
now.
a great rest of your day. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
You too. I hope so. Take care, guys.
Thank you.